I tell you I want a serious relationship, that I'm ready for commitment, that I've learned from past mistakes. Then I cancel our third date because I'm overwhelmed with work, avoid introducing you to my friends, and panic when you leave a toothbrush at my apartment. My words say I want partnership, but my actions scream that I'm terrified of everything real relationship actually requires. The gap between wanting love and being ready for love is where I live most uncomfortably, craving connection while simultaneously sabotaging every step toward it. I'm going to show you the 5 psychological conflicts that create this maddening contradiction, and how to recognize when someone's relationship readiness is more aspiration than reality. The fantasy vs. reality conflict. I want the feeling of being in love, but I resist the daily reality of loving someone consistently. When I say I want a relationship, I'm picturing the highlights: romantic dinners, feeling cherished, having someone to travel with, the security of knowing someone chooses me every day. But those romantic fantasies don't include the mundane challenges that real partnerships require. The reality of relationship means navigating your bad moods, compromising on weekend plans, dealing with your family dynamics, managing conflicts about money or time or priorities. It means showing up when I don't feel like it, being considerate when I'm tired, communicating clearly when I'm overwhelmed. Week 3 of dating you, you suggest we spend Saturday running errands together, grocery shopping, picking up your dry cleaning, stopping by your mother's house. My stomach drops, because this feels like relationship work rather than relationship romance. And I realize I've been wanting the emotional benefits without the daily investment. Week 5, you get food poisoning and ask me to bring you soup and medicine. I agree, but feel resentful that your need for care is interrupting my plans for the evening. I want to be the kind of person who nurtures their partner through illness, but the reality of caretaking feels overwhelming rather than natural. What my therapist helped me understand? I had romanticized relationships to the point where any ordinary human neediness felt like burden rather than normal intimacy. I wanted to feel loved, but wasn't prepared to do the loving that sustains long-term partnership. The contradiction this creates: saying I want commitment while unconsciously resisting every opportunity to practice the daily commitment that builds lasting relationships. Understanding her conflict. When someone says they want a relationship but acts resistant, they might be attracted to the idea of partnership without being prepared for the reality of what partnership actually requires day to day. What reinforces the fantasy? Keeping dates romantic and special, rather than mixing in ordinary life activities. This maintains the illusion that relationships are primarily about feeling good, rather than also about mutual support through regular human complexity. What reveals the reality gap? Introducing normal life responsibilities and seeing how she responds to being needed for ordinary things rather than just romantic things. My chest tightened every time you needed something practical from me, because I wanted to be your girlfriend in theory, but wasn't ready to be your partner in practice. But the fantasy-reality conflict was just covering up something deeper: the autonomy protection system. I say I want partnership, but I'd built my entire identity around not needing anyone. And relationship threatens that independence. For years, I'd taken pride in being self-sufficient, making my own decisions, managing my own problems, creating a life that worked perfectly for one person. Saying I wanted a relationship was aspirational, but actually sharing space, decisions, and daily life with another person felt like giving up the autonomy I'd worked so hard to build. The contradiction shows up in how I respond to your natural desire to be included in my life. When you ask about my weekend plans, I feel interrogated rather than cared about. When you offer advice about work stress, I feel patronized rather than supported. When you want to spend 3 nights a week together, I feel suffocated rather than loved. Month 2, I realize I've been treating you like an addition to my life rather than someone I'm building a shared life with. I want you to fit into my existing routine without requiring me to adjust anything about how I've been living as a single person. Month 3, you suggest we plan a vacation together, and I panic about coordinating schedules, compromise on destinations, sharing a hotel room for a week. All the things that couples normally enjoy feel like threats to my carefully constructed independence. The internal battle this creates, genuinely wanting companionship while being terrified of the interdependence that real companionship requires. I want someone to choose me without me having to choose them back in ways that change how I live. Understanding the autonomy conflict. When someone says they want a relationship but resists integration, they might be struggling with the transition from independent living to interdependent partnership, which requires fundamental changes to identity and lifestyle. What triggers autonomy fears? Any requests that require me to adjust my schedule, consider your preferences, or include you in decision-making processes I've been handling alone. Normal relationship progression feels like loss of self-determination. What helps navigate autonomy concerns? Gradual integration that honors both independence and connection. I love spending time with you, and I also value that we both have full lives outside this relationship. How do we grow closer while still maintaining the independence we both need? My jaw would clench whenever you assumed we'd spend the weekend together, because I wanted to be chosen by you, but wasn't ready to choose you back in ways that required changing my lifestyle. The autonomy protection was defending something even more fundamental. The vulnerability avoidance dance, 3:30 to 5:30. Title card, the vulnerability avoidance dance. I crave emotional intimacy but panic whenever our connection gets deep enough to actually matter. When I say I want a relationship, I'm imagining the safety of being known and accepted. But the process of becoming known requires vulnerability I'm not emotionally prepared to sustain, and the process of accepting someone else requires emotional availability I haven't developed. The pattern shows up most clearly when we have moments of genuine connection. After a deep conversation where I share something personal, I need 3 days of space to recover from the exposure. When you open up about your fears or struggles, I feel overwhelmed by the responsibility of being trusted with your emotional reality. Month 4. We have an incredible evening. Honest conversation, physical intimacy, the kind of connection I thought I wanted. But instead of feeling closer, I feel terrified by how much you now matter to me, how much power you have to hurt me, how dependent I'm becoming on your presence for my own emotional stability. Month 5. I start creating distance through small but consistent emotional unavailability. I respond to your vulnerable texts with surface-level replies. I change the subject when conversations get too deep. I suggest we keep things light after we've spent an evening processing relationship feelings. If you're watching this because someone says they want commitment but acts emotionally unavailable, subscribe now. What I reveal next shows how commitment readiness is more about emotional capacity than conscious desire. The cruel irony: the deeper our connection gets, the more I retreat, because depth creates the exact vulnerability I've spent years learning to avoid. I want the benefits of intimacy without the risks that make intimacy possible. Understanding vulnerability avoidance. When someone says they want a relationship but pulls back from emotional depth, they might be discovering that they're not ready for the level of emotional risk that real intimacy requires. What increases vulnerability fears? Pushing for deeper connection when she's already showing signs of overwhelm. This confirms that intimacy leads to pressure and expectations she can't handle. What respects vulnerability limits? Creating space for both connection and retreat. I love getting to know you on deeper levels, and I understand that intimacy can feel overwhelming sometimes. We can take this at whatever pace feels sustainable for both of us. My throat would close up every time I realized how much I was starting to care about you, because caring that much felt dangerous to every self-protection strategy I'd developed over the years. The vulnerability avoidance was protecting me from the deepest fear of all, the loss anticipation pattern. I want love, but I'm so afraid of losing it that I sabotage it before it becomes important enough to devastate me. Every previous relationship had ended, some badly, some gradually, but all of them had taught me that people leave, feelings change, and the more you invest in someone, the more it hurts when they inevitably disappoint you or move on. Saying I wanted a relationship was true, but wanting something I was certain would end felt masochistic. The self-sabotage shows up as testing your commitment through increasingly difficult behavior. If you're going to leave eventually, I'd rather find out now while I can still recover easily, rather than after I've fallen completely in love with you. Month 6. I pick fights about small things to see if you'll stick around when I'm difficult. I cancel dates at the last minute to see if you'll keep making plans with me. I pull back emotionally to see if you'll pursue me or take it as permission to disengage. Month 7. I realize I'm creating the exact problems I'm afraid will naturally develop. I'm testing whether you'll leave by giving you reasons to leave, then using your frustration as evidence that you were never really committed to begin with. The devastating logic. If I sabotage it now, I'm choosing the ending rather than having it chosen for me. If I create distance now, I won't be blindsided by your eventual loss of interest. If I make it difficult now, I won't be shocked when you decide I'm too much work. Understanding loss anticipation. When someone says they want a relationship, but acts in ways that push their partner away, they might be trying to control the timing and terms of the inevitable ending, rather than investing in making the relationship work. What feeds loss anticipation? Any signs of decreased enthusiasm, changed communication patterns, or natural relationship fluctuations. Normal relationship rhythms feel like evidence of impending abandonment. What challenges loss anticipation? Consistent care that doesn't fluctuate based on her testing behaviors. I notice you seem to be waiting for me to disappoint you or leave. I can't promise I'm perfect, but I can promise I'm not looking for reasons to give up on what we're building. My heart would race every time you seemed tired or distracted because I interpreted normal human variation as the beginning of your loss of interest, which made me want to end things before you could end them first. But loss anticipation was just the surface manifestation of something even deeper. The worthiness uncertainty. I say I want a relationship, but deep down, I don't believe I deserve the kind of love I'm claiming to want. The contradiction between wanting commitment and resisting it isn't really about commitment. It's about my fundamental uncertainty about whether I'm the kind of person who gets to have lasting, healthy love, or if I'm destined for the complicated, unstable relationships that have defined my romantic history. When you treat me with consistent kindness, my brain immediately starts looking for the catch. When you seem genuinely happy to be with me, I assume you don't really know me yet. When you talk about future plans together, I assume you're either naive about my flaws or settling because you don't think you can do better. Month 8. I start sabotaging our connection not because I don't want it, but because I don't trust that it's real. If you're this good to me, either you're not seeing me clearly, or you have low standards for what you deserve in a partner. Month 9. I realize I've been waiting for the moment when you figure out that I'm not as interesting, attractive, or emotionally stable as you initially thought. The relationship feels like borrowed time before you come to your senses and find someone more worthy of the love you're offering. The internal monologue driving the sabotage? I'm not the kind of person who gets the fairy tale. I'm the kind of person who gets complicated, dramatic relationships with unavailable people who who match my own emotional limitations. This healthy thing we have can't last because I don't know how to be healthy. Understanding worthiness uncertainty. When someone says they want a relationship but acts in ways that undermine it, they might be struggling with believing they deserve the good thing that's happening, rather than being ambivalent about wanting it. What reinforces worthiness doubts? Treating her inconsistent behavior as evidence that she doesn't really want the relationship, rather than understanding that she might be struggling with believing she deserves it. What challenges worthiness uncertainty? Loving her consistently without making that love contingent on her being ready or worthy. I'm not with you because you've earned it or because you're perfect. I'm with you because I choose you. Complicated parts included. My stomach would churn every time you said something genuinely loving, because part of me was waiting for the moment you'd realize you'd made a mistake choosing someone like me for something as precious as your heart. These 5 psychological conflicts reveal why someone can simultaneously want and resist the same thing. Every time I said I wanted a relationship, but acted like I didn't, I was caught between my conscious desire for love and my unconscious terror of everything love actually requires. The contradiction wasn't about not knowing what I wanted. It was about wanting something I wasn't emotionally equipped to receive or sustain without doing significant work on my own capacity for intimacy. Understanding someone's relationship ambivalence helps you recognize when their resistance isn't about you personally, but about their own readiness for the vulnerability and interdependence that healthy relationships require. Here's what I wish I could have told you during all those months of mixed signals. I want everything you're offering, and I'm terrified that I don't have the emotional tools to handle it without losing myself or hurting both of us in the process. The gap between wanting a relationship and being ready for one is often filled with unhealed attachment wounds, undeveloped intimacy skills, and self-protection mechanisms that worked for surviving single life but interfere with thriving in partnership. Do I regret saying I wanted something I wasn't ready for? Yes, because it gave you false hope and wasted both our time, while I was figuring out whether I could develop the capacity to match my conscious desires. Do I understand why I resisted what I claimed to want? Finally, and understanding it has motivated me to work on building the emotional foundation that sustainable relationships require. Would I encourage someone to wait for someone to become ready for what they say they want? Only if that person is actively working on their readiness, rather than just hoping it will magically develop. If someone currently says they want a relationship with you, but acts like they don't, unpause. Maybe they're not lying about their desires. Maybe they're discovering the difference between wanting love and being prepared for everything love asks of us. Maybe the most loving thing you can do is recognize that readiness can't be rushed, and your investment in someone who isn't ready yet might be preventing both of you from finding relationships that match your actual capacity rather than your aspirational desires. And maybe honoring someone's actions over their words isn't giving up on them. It's giving both of you permission to align your choices with your actual readiness, rather than your idealized intentions. But how do you balance compassion for someone's growth process with protection of your own need for consistent, available partnership? How do you support someone's development without enabling their avoidance of the work relationships require? These questions require wisdom about when patience serves love and when it enables patterns that prevent growth. Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is trust that people are showing us their current capacity rather than their future potential. If you want to understand more about recognizing authentic relationship readiness, watch my video, How to know if she's actually ready for something real. That video will show you exactly what genuine relationship preparedness looks like versus aspirational desire that hasn't been backed up with emotional development.